right. Good evening, guys. Good evening, Team 1. I'm Mukukumani. I'm going to give you the introduction for our presentation. We are Team 8, and we are here to make a presentation to you on the financial performance of Water Utilities Corporation as audited by an independent audit company, PricewaterhouseCoopers Botswana, from the years 2019 up to the year 2021. The composition of our team is made up of myself, Mukukumani, Mr. Trafalo, Mr. Mupipi, and Mr. Mudisenyani. I'm now going to talk about the background of water utilities. Firstly, the corporation was established in 1970 by an act of Parliament of Botswana. Secondly, the corporation is 100% owned by the government of Botswana. Thirdly, the core mandate of water utilities is to provide potable water and wastewater services to all parts of the country. In addition, as at 2021, WAC has a customer base of 510,000 customers. Furthermore, the corporation, again, as of 2021, provides 80 million cubic meters of potable water to its customers in Botswana. I'm now going to talk about the objective of why we are doing this financial performance of WAC. The objective is to assess, to scrutinize how WAC is performing in terms of its financial performance. Now the question is, why is it important to make this assessment? It is important for water utilities in the sense that, firstly, the corporation will be able to identify its weaknesses. Secondly, it will also be able to identify where it can improve. And then thirdly, it can also benefit WAC in the sense that it can also be in a position to understand where it is doing good. Now at this point, I'm going to talk about how we conducted the financial performance of WAC for the years I stated, 2019 up to the year 2021. We conducted the assessment in two ways. We used the vertical analysis, which is in two forms. There is one for the income statement, which is calculated by as income statement item times 100 over total sales. And then the second one is for the balance sheet, which is calculated as balance sheet item times 100 over total sales. And then we have the second type, which is the horizontal analysis, which is calculated in terms of percentage. Now, it is calculated as amount in current year minus amount in base year 1 over amount in base year. So at this point in time, I would now hand over the baton to Ms. Crawford. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mukukumani. My name is Valencia Trafalo. Good evening, audience. I will be taking you through the liquidity ratios, which are the current ratio and the quick ratio. The current ratio is calculated by current assets over current liabilities. it measures the company's ability to pay off its short-term obligations. If we take a look at the graph, we can see that the current ratios for 2019, 2020, and 2021 are 4.90, 4.81, 2.35 respectively. There was a decrease in the current ratio, which implies that Water Utilities Corporation's liquidity had declined in 2021. The current assets increased by 11% and 4% for the years 2020 and 2021. This implies that Water Utilities Corporation had enough current assets to cover its current liabilities for the year 2020 and 2021. Taking a look now at the quick ratio, which is current assets minus inventories over current liabilities. The quick ratio measures the extent to which the company is able to pay its short-term obligations using its liquid assets. Looking at the graph, we can see that the quick ratio for 2019, 2020, and 2021 are 4.80, 4.72, and 2.29 respectively. And there was a decrease in the quick ratio by 2% and 52% for the years 2020 and 2021 respectively. And since there was the quick ratio was more than 1, it tells us that Water Utilities had enough funds for liquidity to cover its current liabilities for the year 2020 and 2021. Thank you. I will give it to Mr. Mupipi.
Thank you very much, Ms. Twafalo, for giving me the opportunity to give my presentation. Good evening, colleagues. My name is Nonofo Mupipi. I'll be taking you through activity ratios, also known as efficiency ratios, which are really meant to gauge the organization's ability to effectively and efficiently produce sales, and they are typically used to evaluate the financial operations of a company or an organization. And these two activity ratios that I'll be taking you through are inventory turnover ratio and the total assets turnover ratio. The first ratio, which is the inventory turnover ratio, is calculated as depicted in the screen as sales divided by inventories. The inventory turnover ratio for the year 2020 and 2021 were 36.70 and 33.66 respectively. And the inventory turnover ratio decreased by 8% for the year 2021, which meant that there was a bit of a decrease in the inventories on the stock. And the percentage of the inventories increased by 12% and 22% for the years 2020 and 2021, respectively, when compared to the base year 2019. This is tantamount to the fact that the company is selling goods very quickly, and there's a strong demand for the product, which is water. And in essence, for inventory turnover ratios, the rule of thumb is that when it's strong, a high inventory turnover ratio means that the company is selling goods quickly, and a low one indicates that there's slow sales and a weak demand for the company's products. So in this case, we had a very good inventory turnover ratio, meaning that now we had the product going very quickly. And now moving to the total assets turnover ratio. The total assets turnover ratio is calculated as sales over total assets, meaning that the cost of sales over the total assets in the company. The total asset turnover ratio of WAC was 0 in the base year 2019 and 0.19 in 2020 and 0.17 in 2021 respectively, meaning that there was a slight increase between 2020 and 2021 for the total asset turnover ratio. And the total assets of WAC grew by 6% and 21% in 2020 and 2021 respectively, when compared to 2019, where there was a 0 growth. And the percentage total assets turnover decreased by 13% in 2021 in relation to 2020. This implies that the company's asset turnover showed that the company was efficient in the investment on the fixed assets. Now, when we move to the leverage or gearing ratios, the leverage or gearing ratios, I will discuss the debt to asset ratio. The debt to asset ratio is calculated by calculating the total debt over the total assets of the company. When we look at the graph there, it depicts that there was an equilibrium of 2% or an equal balance between the total debt and the total assets of WAC in 2020 and 2021 respectively, when we compare to the base year 2019, where there was a 0 marking. And there was a slight decrease of 14% of the debt to asset ratio by 14% in the year 2021, depicting that WAC was performing very well in terms of moving its stock to augment for the loss in making profit. The growth of the total assets grew by 6% and 21% for the year 2020 and 2021 respectively, when we compare to the base year 2019. This implies that WAC was performing better in relation to balancing its total debt and its total assets. Now I'll hand over the baton to my colleague, Mr. Clement Mjisanyane, to give us the profitability ratios.
Thank you, Mr. Mopipi, for that submission. Good evening, everyone. I'll be taking you through the profitability ratios, being gross profit margin and rate of return on assets. Those are the formulas for those profitability ratios. But by definition, GPM is the money left after paying for the direct cost of doing business, which can include labor, materials, and other total operating expenses. It's very important for the GPM to be high enough so that one can have a viable business. It should be such that sales or revenues cover for the total operating cost. That's when you can see your GPM is quite good. Now, as for ROTA, this is a financial ratio which is used to measure the company relations to its total assets. We can move on. But when you consider this graph here, one can depict that the GPM for 2020 and 2021 are 2.08 and 2.25 respectively. These are very high GPM. Like I've already alluded to before, one can conclude that they depict a very sustainable business. GPM also increased by 9% in 2021 relative to 2020. But the sales dropped by 0.43% in 2021 relative to 2020. In 2021, okay, Now, in this graphical representation, we can depict that the rate of return on assets for 2020 and 2021 are 5.12, and there was a decline of 14.98 respectively for the year 2021. And then ROTA decreased by 392% for the year 2021. Here in 2021, water utilities didn't make any profit. Hence, that's the reason why the rate of return on assets was the percentage was very high for that. As for total assets, they increased by 6% and 21% for the year 2020 and 2021 respectively. And this percentages were relative to the year 2019, sorry. We can move on. Now, for conclusions and recommendations, so based on the computed financial ratios, WACC didn't satisfy the international financial reporting standards or the conventional rule. In terms of liquidity ratios, all of the liquidity ratios as presented by my colleagues were greater than 1. And this implies that water utilities managed to pay off its current liabilities with its current assets. But as for asset utilization, the asset utilization was very low. And hence the ITOR is not healthy for the works operations. And the average ITOR was 24 times, which implies that the inventory could be turned into new inventory within roughly 3 years. You can see that there's quite a very long time, which the material might or the stock might end up being obsolete. But in terms of chemicals, I would say they might expire. Hence, it will be this will contribute to loss of profit. In terms of operating expenses, according to the report from PricewaterhouseCoopers, the cost of sales surpassed the sales. Hence, this caused a drastic reduction in profit margins, especially for the year 2021. Also, there was a poor financial standing as evidenced by the debt to asset ratio of 2% for two consecutive years of 2020 and 2021. Let's go to recommendations. Work to undertake a regular ratio analysis of financial ratios and set a benchmark for comparison purposes, which means if we could, as work, do a regular analysis of these ratios, some other organizations can come to work and benchmark. We should also adopt a prudent financial management. We should cut on costs. Some of the cost drivers, like the overtimes or overtime premiums, have been are withheld. Hence, there are no overtimes as we speak. What should also aim is to converting short-term liabilities into long-term liabilities. The long-term liabilities here, we mean that work should also negotiate the payment terms, the longer payment terms with these vendors. It should also refinance its debt with long-term contracts. It should also increase capital in the form of cash. Work should also be accredited with ISO 55001 of asset management. We believe that by so doing, the percentage asset utilization will drastically improve, because now work will be versed in terms of asset utilization, which is attached to the ROTA, or the rate of return on asset. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm done.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope we are now opening for questions from colleagues from the floor.
Thank you so much, Group 8, for a well-articulated presentation, which was very informative. I have a question for you as a team. What are inventories involved in Water Utilities Corporation? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Makhatle, for your question. We appreciate that. By inventories at work, we mean spares and consumables, such as PV pipes, nipples, fittings, saddles, and chemicals for treatment of water. That's what inventory means to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
I also have a question for you. I would like to know how the COVID pandemic affected the overall performance of Water Utilities Corporation. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question. COVID-19, like any other organization, has affected work in terms of its overall performance. There was a presidential directive stating that we shouldn't cut water supply to our customers. Hence, that on its own contributed negatively to the sales because we couldn't bill our customers during that period. Hence, there was loss of business. So, in fact, that's one of the contributing factors that has contributed to the debt that you are currently having as water utilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the questions and answers. I believe we've come to the end of the presentation. Thank you for being a good audience, Group 1, and thank you, colleagues, for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.